You don't fall for people easily, but when you do, it's usually someone who can almost meet you. Someone who feels intense for a moment. Someone who opens one hidden door, then disappears behind 5 more. And somehow that almost feels familiar. Not safe, not peaceful, just emotionally alive enough to keep you leaning in. You tell yourself you're drawn to depth, but what often pulls you in is emotional mystery mixed with emotional distance. Because distance can feel profound when you spent your life reading between lines. Silence starts to feel meaningful, and inconsistency starts to feel layered. So you notice the pauses, the delayed text, the softened voice, the warmth that appears and vanishes. And instead of losing interest, your mind gets louder. You start listening harder, hoping clarity will come if you love carefully enough. That's the trap. Emotionally deep people often confuse emotional complexity with emotional capacity. Those are not the same thing. Someone can stir your nervous system without being able to hold your heart. And that difference changes everything. Because attraction is not always recognition of health. Sometimes it's recognition of pattern. You may think you keep attracting unavailable partners because you love deeply, but often you're attracted because you love deeply in a direction that feels earned. Love that comes easily can feel suspicious. Love that comes with uncertainty can feel valuable, even when it quietly drains you. So you meet someone guarded, calm, a little hard to read. They seem self-contained, thoughtful, maybe even wise. They don't overshare. They don't chase. They reveal themselves slowly, which makes every small opening feel important. You feel chosen when they finally soften. A simple text starts to feel intimate because it came from someone so emotionally withheld. That's why the bond can feel stronger than it is. Scarcity turns small moments into emotional events. You start building meaning out of fragments. Not because you're foolish, but because you're highly responsive to subtle emotional shifts. You hear what other people miss. You notice the half smile, the hesitation, the tenderness buried under restraint. That sensitivity is real, but it can also become the very thing that keeps you attached to someone who gives too little. Because when you're emotionally deep, you don't just respond to what is present. You also respond to what seems possible. You can sense the love someone is capable of, not just the love they consistently give, and that can make potential feel like reality. So you stay connected to glimpses. You attach to the version of them that appears in rare, beautiful moments. Meanwhile, your body keeps paying for the rest. The waiting, the confusion, the self-editing, the quiet ache after every almost conversation. This is where many emotionally deep people get misunderstood. From the outside, it looks like you're choosing the wrong person over and over. But inside, it feels more complicated than that. You're not chasing coldness. You're chasing emotional truth hidden inside cold behavior. You keep feeling something real beneath their distance. And sometimes you're right. The problem is not that they feel nothing. The problem is that feeling something is not the same as being available for love. A person can care about you deeply and still be unable to stay emotionally present. They can miss you, want you, and still make closeness feel lonely. That's one of the most painful lessons in adult intimacy. Depth of feeling does not guarantee depth of relating. Some people feel everything privately, but when connection asks something of them, they shut the door and call it needing space. Others grew up learning that love came with tension. So calm, mutual affection feels flat, while unpredictability feels charged and meaningful. If that's you, you may not realize how fast your system wakes up around inconsistency. It reads uncertainty as importance. Not because you enjoy pain, because part of you learned that closeness must be monitored, protected, and slowly earned. Maybe care was inconsistent growing up. Maybe affection existed, but emotional attunement came and went. Maybe someone loved you, but didn't really know how to stay with your feelings. So now you can recognize care, but you still struggle to trust steadiness. That matters more than people think. Because when steadiness feels unfamiliar, unavailable partners can seem strangely rich and compelling. You don't fall for the easy warmth. You fall for the warmth that flickers. The flicker activates hope, and hope can be incredibly adhesive when you've spent years trying to earn clear love from unclear people. So when an unavailable person gives you a vulnerable moment, you don't just enjoy it, you organize yourself around it. You replay it at night. You use it to explain the distance that followed. You think, they do care. They're just overwhelmed. They do feel this. They're just scared. And maybe they are, but your empathy can become a bridge that only you are crossing. That's the hidden cost of emotional depth. You can understand someone so well that you stop measuring what the relationship actually feels like. You become loyal to their inner world. Meanwhile, your own needs start sounding too loud, too needy, too inconvenient. So you say less. You need reassurance, but you don't ask because you don't want to pressure them. You want closeness, but you scale yourself down. You tell yourself being understanding is love. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's self-abandonment dressed up as emotional maturity. Look at the pattern closely. You send a thoughtful message, and they reply hours later with something warm but thin. You tell yourself not to overreact, but your whole body already felt the drop. Or they pull you close after a few distant days. Suddenly they're affectionate, present, almost exactly what you wanted. And instead of feeling settled, you feel relief. Relief is not the same thing as safety. Safety doesn't feel like winning someone back. Safety feels like not having to wonder where you stand after tenderness. But if you're used to emotional uncertainty, relief can masquerade as intimacy. It feels intense, so it feels important. Then there's the moment after you open up. You say something honest, maybe soft, maybe a little unguarded. For a second, it feels beautiful. Then they go quiet, change tone, or become less available the next day. That's when emotionally deep people often turn against themselves. You start revising what you said instead of noticing what their withdrawal is showing you. You tell yourself you were too much, too serious, too vulnerable, too fast. But often you were simply emotionally present, and they were only comfortable while things stayed controlled, light, or partial. So now you learn a painful rhythm. Longing comes first, honesty comes second, distance comes third. Eventually, you become careful with your own heart, not because you don't feel, but because your feelings keep landing in spaces that cannot hold them. This creates a strange contradiction. You seem strong, but inside you are constantly bracing. You may look composed in relationships, yet privately you are decoding tone, timing, and emotional shifts with exhausting precision. You can survive on very little clarity. That is not a gift, even if it once helped you. It means you know how to stay emotionally invested in situations that would make other people leave sooner. You can make a home inside ambiguity. And unavailable partners often sense that. Not consciously, not maliciously, but they feel your patience. They feel that you won't demand immediate definition. They feel your ability to understand complexity, and they rest inside it. At first, that can make you seem perfectly matched. You don't rush them, and they don't feel cornered. But over time, the imbalance grows. You keep translating their silence while nobody is translating yours. You become the emotionally literate one, the one who notices, softens, waits, explains, and absorbs. That role can feel noble. It can even feel intimate. But intimacy is not being the only person who can name what's happening. Intimacy is two people being willing to stay emotionally honest together. And this is where a lot of deep people get stuck. They are excellent at connection, but not always excellent at choosing reciprocity. You may know how to hold pain. You may not yet know how to distrust patterns that require your pain to keep existing. That doesn't mean your love is wrong. It means your love may still be reaching toward what feels familiar instead of what feels safe. Because emotionally unavailable partners often activate something old. They recreate the ache of being near love, but not fully inside it. That ache can feel strangely romantic. It gives your inner world something to work on, decode, and hope for. A healthy connection can feel quieter at first. There's less guessing, less adrenaline, less emotional detective work. And if your heart is used to earning closeness, calm may feel empty before it feels nourishing. That's a hard truth. Sometimes you don't miss unavailable people because they were deeper. You miss how intensely your system organized around them. You miss the high contrast, the absence, the reunion, the rare softness that felt like a reward. But reward is not the same as love. Intermittent warmth can create attachment that feels spiritual, while slowly eroding your self-trust. So the question is not just, why do I attract emotionally unavailable partners? The deeper question is, why does a part of me still experience emotional inconsistency as meaningful? That question changes the story. It moves you away from blame and closer to self-understanding. Because this pattern is rarely about weakness. It is often about a very intelligent form of self-protection that learned the wrong definition of closeness. Maybe you became emotionally deep because you had to read unspoken things early. You learned to sense moods, track distance, and find connection in subtle places. That made you perceptive. It also made you likely to overvalue people who communicate in fragments. When someone is fully available, There's less to interpret, and for a mind shaped by emotional scarcity, that can feel almost unfamiliar. So yes, you may attract unavailable partners, but just as often, they activate something in you before available people ever get the chance. You feel chemistry with guardedness. You feel pulled toward restraint because it gives your depth somewhere to go. But real love does not need your depth to survive emotional drought. Real love deepens because both people keep showing up. It does not punish honesty. It does not go cold when things become real. It doesn't make you afraid of your own tenderness. It makes tenderness feel sustainable. And that may be the clearest sign of maturity in love, not finding someone complicated, but recognizing who stays kind after closeness begins. Someone emotionally available is not always the most magnetic person in the room. They are often the person whose warmth does not disappear after you reveal yourself. They don't just create a moment, they create continuity. That can feel less dramatic in the beginning, but over time, continuity becomes one of the deepest forms of romance. Because being loved well is not just about being desired. It is about being emotionally safe in the presence of someone who knows you matter. And emotional safety can feel almost suspicious when you've lived too long in mixed signals. You may want reassurance, then mistrust it the moment it arrives. That doesn't make you broken. It means your heart is trying to update an older map while still carrying an older fear. So if you keep attracting unavailable partners, don't just ask who they are. Ask what feels familiar when you are with them. Do you feel chosen, or do you feel activated? Do you feel calm, or do you feel busy inside? Do you feel more honest, or more edited? Do you feel closer to yourself, or more preoccupied with earning access to them? Those questions matter, because some relationships do not fail from lack of feeling. They fail from lack of emotional usability. A person may have a deep soul and still be a shallow place to rest. That sentence hurts, but it saves people. Especially people like you. People who can feel oceans in a single glance and build cathedrals from tiny emotional clues. Your depth is not the reason you suffer. The suffering begins when your depth keeps investing in people who only visit themselves in flashes. You do not need to become less feeling. You may need to become more discerning about where your feelings are allowed to live. Because the goal is not to stop loving deeply. The goal is to stop calling instability depth just because it makes you ache. The right person will still be complex. They will still have fears, moods, history, and hard days. But they will not make closeness feel like a vanishing act. They will not treat your tenderness like a temperature they can only tolerate briefly. And when that kind of love arrives, it may not feel like obsession. It may feel like exhale. At first, exhale can seem almost too quiet. Then one day, you realize peace was never emptiness. It was the first sign that your heart no longer had to perform for connection. It could finally be met there. So maybe emotionally deep people attract unavailable partners for a while. But that is not the end of the story. The deeper truth is this: your depth was never meant to chase closed doors. It was meant to be recognized, held without confusion, returned without disappearance, and loved without making you doubt your own reality. And the moment you stop romanticizing emotional absence, your depth stops begging to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding themselves. Then love begins to look different. Not harder to earn, just easier to stay inside. And for someone who has spent years loving through tension, that kind of ease won't feel shallow. It will feel like finally being loved in a language your nervous system can trust.